The speaker today is very prestigious one as well as an easy one, because I am going to introduce a person who is very well known, not only within India, even outside. He is an aerospace engineer and a rocket technologist. He has actually worked for almost 35 years in the Indian Space Research Organization. And previously, he has been in charge of the Polar Satellite Vehicle scheme, as well as he was the director of the Liquid Propulsion Center, LPSC, since I think 2015 June, and from 2018 January onwards, he is the director of this prestigious center in Trivandrum, VSSC. Our first Prime Minister of India had actually put the expectations of the whole country in two organizations, and the two founders who were Indians, the space research, Vikram Sarabhai, and in atomic energy, Dr. Homi J. Bhabha. And we all know that VSSC's as well as the ISRO's space program has been one of our own making. And that has been due to the effort and the application of intelligence, logic, and design capability of thousands of engineers led by very eminent space technologists. And today we have Sri Somnath, one among them, who has actually had very vital role in the most prestigious ISRO space projects of India. I don't think there is any more words required for introducing Somnath. The topic itself that he has chosen, I know that all those who are actually hooked up to this lecture program are actually crossing their fingers. He's going to speak on technology disruptions in post-2030 era and our preparedness. So this is something we all just do not know what it is. And as a very good orator and a very powerful technology disseminator, I'm sure Sri Somnath will actually take us through this theme and give us enormous amount of insight into what India is planning for our future space effort. Thank you. Thank you, Sri Somnath ji. It's up to you.
I hope I can begin now.
Sure.
Okay, so thank you, sir. And thank you, everybody, for giving this opportunity to participate in this webinar of the Interest Society's webinar, in fact. So all of you, my greetings, because the organizing units includes the IEEE Kerala section, the Institution of Engineers, the Computer Society of India, Project Management Institute, the Internet Society, Vakam Maulavi Foundation, IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology, Kerala's chapter. And I'm sure all of you, your great amount of responses really humbles me. And I'm sure that all of you are interested, because the topic itself is something that very, very challenging and very interesting for all of us, those who are in the professional area. So what I am planning to do is to give a PowerPoint presentation. We have 1 hour, and I will try to complete maybe in 45 minutes, and then there can be some discussions, questions, etc. And I think that is fine.
Yes, sir. Then, yeah, it is all
That's okay. That's okay.
So now I will start sharing my screen. You can comment whether it is visible everywhere.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, so the topic is technology disruptions in post-2030 era and our preparedness. So when Professor Damodaran asked me to give this talk, and I was thinking about the topic, and I gave this topic to him, he had a doubt whether I'm going to really talk about 2020 era because there is a COVID around, and you are little going beyond 2020, going to 2030. Then I assured him that what I am going to talk is about 2030 era only, and not really 2020 post-COVID era. So the technology disruptions, when you are speaking about, it must be a certain period that we need to give for things to mature and then to become something visible to you. So I believe 2030 is a good time to make predictions. Now, as I told earlier, the post-COVID era, that is now 2020 being the COVID year, and we know that the whole year is really lost some way or the other because we are in the lockdown and the effect of the COVID-19 and how it is going to change the way we work, etc., is not going to be well defined at this moment of time. And there are a lot of discussions, ideas coming out, and a lot of even webinars being conducted on this post-COVID-19 period and how we need to handle it. I thought that that topic is not something that I need to discuss today. So the 2021 to 2025 period, in fact, I say this is a post-COVID-19 period where there will be certain visible changes and immediate and visible changes. As all of you know, there will be changes in the jobs, which is the one which is easily affected. Then work from home, the concept and how that is going to become the main theme on which many of the companies are going to organize themselves. The way education, entertainment, healthcare are changing. I think these are visible to all of you. But at the same time, there will be other changes which are cultural and political changes, which include the idea of back to roots. I think these discussions are happening in many segments. The importance of being in your roots and how it is going to make our life better, considering certain evolutionary changes that will happen post-COVID-19 period. The question of relocation. Relocation includes relocation of the people from various places and also relocation of industries and enterprises. And there is the more and more thrust on self-reliance. I think this political system will go on talking about this because the dependence on countries, other countries on our economy and our life is now being one of the important points that is being discussed. When you come to the technology changes in this period, as all of you know, that it will be more and more of an IT-enabled economy. And IT-enabled technologies will become very important. Automation, though it is there very much in industries, but then the thrust on automation is going to increase because how to run an industry with a lesser number of people will be one of the important topics industries will be discussing. Service aggregation is another important thing where a lot of IT-enabled services and other services will try to amalgamate into some common platforms. Drugs and pharma, of course, is another area which is immediately affected. Of course, I being a space technology fellow, I should speak about space technology changes as well. Definitely in this talk, I have to speak about space. Without that, in fact, I will feel myself incomplete. So when I talk about technologies, that definitely is an element. But in the world in the realignment phase, which is going to be 2026 to 2030 plus period, what is going to happen is something left to the imagination. But then we need to understand and make predictions and how it is going to evolve, because this is the responsibility I have taken when I want to talk about this topic. So let me put some of the thoughts in this way. I'll say that in 2026-2030 period will be a new generation in place, will come. Really, the people who are talking today and people who are in charge, I am talking about people like me, will be out, and the people who are going to take the hem of affairs will be the new generation, and definitely new generation has a better resilience and capability to handle situations. And areas of realignment, which includes in technology, which includes the computation, IoT, manufacturing, healthcare, there will be large changes. There will be changes in individuals. For example, the individuals will look at learning skills in a different way. There will be more and more thrust on entrepreneurship rather than getting a job. In social life, the issues of individual individuals versus corporation, because the social life is something somebody will decide on himself, or it will be decided as a joint activity. The question of entertainment and its role in social life will be really changing. Governance in this period will be, the thrust will be to minimize and bring out only policies and don't interfere, and leave it to the society or the economy to decide what it has to do. And finally, the nations and that it will see itself that it is shrinking, but the more and more global national conscience will, that will be expanding. This is also visible if you observe very keenly the way many countries, they are shrinking to self. They want to contain within themselves. So this feeling will be there in the political system, but the people around realizes that it is a global nation. That conscience is something that is going to sustain us for a long time. So this is in essence of the change. But now I want to speak about a future. So when you speak about future, what is the material that I have to speak about the future? Of course, a lot of work is done by many people about what will happen in 2030, and quite large amount of literature, research papers, survey papers are available on which that you can make a certain understanding and then make predictions and how it is going to evolve. Of course, I am not going to speak about all areas and then predict whatever is going to happen, and I don't take any ownership of any of those predictions as well. But before we make a prediction, I am reminded of Arthur C. Clarke. He wrote in his book, The Profiles of the Future, that there are 3 laws of prediction, and they are interesting laws. And I want to remind you about these 3 laws because these are important to take bail when I venture into this. That when a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he's almost certainly right. But when he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. And the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. And any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So these 3 laws of prediction will apply to whatever I am going to speak from now. And you are responsible to wait and then take what you want to take from what I speak. Now, in my title, there is one word called our preparedness. The our stands for my country. It is India 2030. So when we talk about what is going to happen in 2030, I would like to put the base reference for India properly and then say India 2030 is definitely a country with a sufficient amount of technology leadership. It has trained manpower, and it has a young workforce, a big market, but we have still a largely rural content population to the extent of something like 60% of our people are going to live in rural environment in 2030. And there will be the scenarios that will emerge in 2030, which includes the population growth, but becoming stabilized to some number, the GDP rise, the annual budget growth, the agriculture export growth, energy demand growing, but still we become energy deficient and we'll still be depending upon imported energy. So this is in general some of the points that we need to refer to what India is in 2030, on which that we are going to discuss the technology disruptions and how it is going to ultimately affect each one of us in this country. But if you look at world 2030, world in 2030 will be definitely a technology driven world, because those small effects of this COVID, I think I am ignoring at this moment, and look at with a very positive note what will happen in the world. And definitely the industry 4.0, which is driven by artificial intelligence and compute power, will be really happening. The space area, where spacefaring nations will continue to remain only a few. India is going to emerge as a superpower. What is that power? I am not going to define. The climate change and the war for water is something that is going to be there. Emissions diminishing because the thrust on various other fuels, especially in the area of power sector. And energy secured world is something that is going to happen. And world in the hands of the corporates, which is already there, but then it is going to expand in a bigger way, and nations will become weaker. This is a certain type of prophecy type of statements, but then of course it has its own explanations, which I would like to give in later time. Now, look at our experience. I think all of us professionals who are in this business have seen that the technologies have been influencing it so much, and it has changed the consumption of consumers, and our life has changed dramatically over the last many years. I only want to mention some of them only to remind it of the changes that is really happening. For example, in the area of photography, films, and image processing and its sharing, the technology has really changed so dramatically, and within our lifespan, we were able to understand it very well. Look at music, the composing, the sharing, the media has also changed significantly. Even that encyclopedias are no longer being sold, and encyclopedias there in your mobile. The print and other media has changed significantly. Libraries and the knowledge sharing process has changed quite a bit. Books and reading habits and even the book publishing has changed. Still there are books, but then it is changed. Learning and teaching are subject to significant changes over the years. I can still remember our childhood and the way my children study are entirely different. The product design processes, the prototyping, virtual manufacturing have come in big way. Concurrent design processes are there in the system now. Procurement, storage, and warehousing concepts have changed. Food and consumption habits have changed. Mobility and automobiles have changed because of the technology inversion. Even hotels, tours, health, medical care, data processing, security operations, all of these are changed within our lifespan, and we are able to visualize all of this due to simple technology induction in midst of each of this. Now, what is going to happen in the future? When you look at the disruptive technologies, some of the topics alone I am going to discuss today, but there are quite a large amount of areas where we can explain it further and go and study, understand what are the work done by various people. But as a collection of some of the key and important topics alone, I would like to discuss within the available time. On the future of computers, on the topic of entertainment, mobility, artificial intelligence, virtual world, medicine, language barriers, knowledge and education, nanotechnology, energy, wealth of nations, etc. I think these are very important topics, and maybe some of them I will be explaining in my subsequent slides. Because of that, I am not spending much time on this slide. Now look at the future of computers. The future of computers, of course, the compute power is going to increase substantially, and the availability of better and better compute power within your palm devices, etc., is one domain, and miniaturization and still becoming cost effective, and all those things are going to happen. But what is interesting to me is something that is going to change the way we are going to work, which includes the brain-computer interface, where the cognitive capability of the human beings are going to be augmented with the compute skills which will be outside available. And through this, we will be able to do much more than what we are currently able to do through through the interfaces that we have with the machine and the human being. So basically, the work will be in the area of minimizing the interfaces between machine and the human being. And when this happens, the ability of the human beings will be much higher than with what it has today. So where I want to speak about is the type of work done in various segments, like the communication capabilities that they are bringing into the defense sector in the battlefield, or a communication capability that you want to bring into small systems like smartphones, etc., are very, very important. And this shows that this technology is going to be worked upon in the coming years, and slowly it will become mature enough to come into our day-to-day devices that we are going to use. So basically, the thinking process, analyzing capabilities of human beings will be supported or augmented by this interfacing with the physical computers. And that is something that is really interesting and worth watching for. Another area is the artificial intelligence and the machine learning activities. Of course, the machine learning being a tool to analyze the data, and artificial intelligence being a logical process by which that you can make any useful result out of it. Various tools are coming out of an AI, which includes image processing, which is slowly there in your midst, in your mobile phones, in your Alexa, in your Siri, everywhere that activities are happening. And we have seen this is going to expand substantially into other areas, like the security and your attendance activities, even navigation, in this area, image processing is going to get into in a big way. Similarly, the natural language processing for learning activity, for commanding and doing things, even in languages. In fact, we must see that the language barriers are something that is going to vanish when it is going to be more prevalent, because there is no necessity to learn other languages when such tools are there within your reach. And looking at the data that is required for AI, the higher dimensions of the data and the tensors are already there, and the activities related to these studies are very much happening. In the AI, one of the important thrust in the future development technology is to give personalized experience to people. I think this is going to be one of the important area. Similarly, the decision-making process in finance and banking, that will be handled by AI. It is right now, it is not happening in a big way, but the work on this area is something that will happen, because your share markets and the pricing and all that will be now not really decided by individuals, and it will be decided, or not even by corporates, but by computers. And this is something really wonderful. Robotic process automation is another area where this AI is going to play a big role. But the biggest challenge for artificial intelligence is something called data readiness for AI, because we are having huge amount of data. But then to enable artificial intelligence to come in, that this data is to be processed and then enabled to be acceptable to AI. And this is something is the biggest challenge in the coming years. So essentially to say that AI will recognize us, but we will not be even recognizing that there is AI around us. I think this is the type of change that is going to happen. Another area which is interesting is the genomics and the medicine. In the medical field, the type of research and technology that is invading, especially the electronics and the nano micro technologies that is getting into the medical field alone, I am discussing, because medical field itself is a vast area where there is large amount of science and technology improvement taking place in various segments. But just three of them I just want to take here, which includes the medical imaging and its impact. Slowly, the imaging technology is going into molecular diagnosis, molecular medicine, and molecular imaging, which helps us to go into the finer details and then look at cells and the chemistry of it, and then for which that you are able to deliver medicines and then see its effect. So to that extent that you are able to understand, then treat people or even diagnose people. Similarly, to understand or analyze the biological analysis of a person, there will be lab on a chip type of concepts, which can do the processing much, much faster. Similarly, the DNA analysis, there is a microfluidic devices which are already in conceptual stage, and this is going to be one of the important tool in analysis and then fast diagnosis of people. And with large data, now medical data itself is going to be huge, and there is certain amount of comparison and some references which says that this data studies required a large amount of analytics tools which are required, and our data sciences will get into medical field in a large way. I think that is something really interesting to watch for. Agriculture is another important area. If you really read through the literature available in agriculture and how it is going to change in the period up to 2030, I am not able to see big impact. Basically, it says that there will be sufficient agricultural production assured for all of us, and for up to 2030, of course. Though the growth in agriculture will be very small, and there will be tapering down, and the type of food availability to the developed and non-developed countries will remain reasonably slightly improving, but not significantly different. There will continue to be chronic undernourishment in developed countries, in developing countries. But essentially, the statement is that global resources will be sufficient, but in local regimes, there will be large problem like a non-availability of food at some areas. And there will be a thrust on biofuels, and this is one of the area where the agriculture technologies, agriculture will slightly get diverted. So some of the technologies that is coming into agriculture are going to be precision farming and algorithmic agriculture, which is nothing but looking at the farm field and finding out what type of crops that we need to look at each of the area in more scientific manner than what is being done by people today. The integration of sensors, which includes temperature, humidity, and other parameters which are conducive for agriculture, using GPS data, spacecraft data in a big way. And most of the fields to be operated by robots. Today they are by machines, and machines will become robots. Drones will become one of the important tool for seeding the pesticides and assessment. Water resource planning and regulation is something which is very, very important to maintain good agricultural yield. The technologies in seed production, storing, preservation, maintenance, its heritage, micronutrients application, pesticides minimization and control, and targeted application of these things are going to be the technology domains in which the agriculture area is going to see in the coming years. In the knowledge and education area, the keywords which we are going to watch in the coming decade are the personalization of the education, the collaboration, and informalization. So the informal way of learning is going to be the thrust. So you can say that you can learn from anywhere. The classrooms will be reimagined. There will be peer-to-peer learning rather than from teacher to student alone. And there will be methods to give digital credit rather than conducting examination and then giving marks, and adaptive learning based on what you are capable of. For your textbook getting changed the way you are able to learn. For example, it will be starting with a low level or a medium level, and if you show indications that you have higher capacity to learn, it will show itself in much higher and higher levels. So think about such concepts. The institutions, basically educational institutions, will become more open, and there will be flatter hierarchies for knowledge sharing, and institutions will start recognizing basically the informally acquired skills. So if you look at the overall thing, you say the learning process will never be a phase in our life. That means we will not be students sometime and then later professionals, but it's going to be a lifelong theme. And micro learning, on-demand learning, and there are new terminologies. These are going to come by those companies, and more and more digital. There will be super intelligent mass individualization of learning. This is what I mentioned earlier. Based on the demand that the student is showing to show, the learning process will also become brilliant enough to adapt to it. And the user experience for learning will become conversational. That means that you will be trained to learn the way that you are comfortable with. And it will be blending the work or the practice, and also learning will go together. That really means the skill adaptation, skill learning will also happen in the learning process. Now look at industries. I want to check with you that I'm audible and I am all right in this speech till now.
Yes, sir, you are audible and it's very clear. Thank you.
Okay. Now looking at the industries, the trends is going to be that the globe becomes more and more technologically oriented. The thrust is on automation. Artificial intelligence will continue to replace millions of jobs. So according to the McKinsey Global Institute report, 375 million jobs will vanish by 2030. And this number is increasing. Sometimes it will be 800, like that. There are reports. But even if there are technological innovations, despite these changes, many of the industries will definitely grow exponentially. So which are those hot areas? Of course, the analytics and big data, that is going to be one of the important area. Cyber security is going to be a very important area, because data breach is going to be too costly, because data itself is the asset that we have. Healthcare for the aging is going to be a very important topic, because the number of people who are available above 60 is going to increase, and they will have the power to support this business, and that the healthcare activity will become one of the important business. Renewable energy is going to be an area where there are large amount of job opportunity, which includes solar panels and other non-conventional energy resources, manufacturing, supporting, maintaining, etc. Drones is another area where there is going to be large number of type of drones going to be deployed. We will discuss one slide on the drones later, where there will be jobs like drone pilots, and the data that is coming out of the drones analysis and making value out of it. So these type of things are going to be some of the very different industries that will be in place. Now let us discuss about IoT. I think IoT is well known to all of you. It's a techno-commercial paradigm, which is nothing but the IP-enabled objects are connected to each other through internet or whatever. So this concept is being used by different organizations to enlarge their enterprise and make it effective for various activities. The ecosystem for IoT is well known that there are a set of sensors either in person or in equipments and facilities. And these sensors collect enough amount of information in various types of information, communicate to the processing devices, goes to a cloud, processed, and it gives you certain visualization, commanding capability, etc. And this data is archived. So this is a ecosystem where the IoT is working, and this creates certain capabilities with us. As all of you are aware, this IoT, there is a Government of India policy in which it talks about creating in India's 100 smart cities, which includes various capabilities in smart cities they are envisaging when IoT comes in place, such as the smart parking, intelligent transport system, telecare, women safety, smart grids, smart urban lighting, waste management, city maintenance, digital signage, water management. In various aspects, this IoT can slowly come in. And there are various schemes proposed by the Government of India policy in this water, environment, health, waste management, etc., all becoming smarter. So basically, this is one of the area where there is a large amount of activity and work and business is going to happen. So if you look at the market for IoT in India, this is a little old analysis, but then it shows that there is a large amount of utilization, especially in the transport and logistics sector, in the utilities, automobiles, healthcare, in agriculture to some extent. So there is an assessment done to show that there is sufficient market potential for IoT in this country. So when another important area that I want to discuss is about the Industry 4.0 and IoT. So Industry 4.0 is a concept that is going to happen, is already happening. It is an industrial revolution based on data and the way it can be gathered and analyzed and used to make the right decisions and to develop IoT as a competitive factor. So in Industry 4.0, various things are going to happen, which includes the automated robots, the simulation, the horizontal and vertical integration of various activities, industrial IoT, cybersecurity, cloud-based services, additive manufacturing, augmented reality, and big data analysis. So basically, it says that the whole industry and manufacturing process will become more intelligent, basically because of the high amount of data it generates, and you make sense out of it, and then you are able to modify the process. So it includes devices, machines, production modules that are able to independently exchange information, trigger actions, and control each other. So this is an intelligent manufacturing environment. So this is something that is going to be pervasive. So basically data becomes very important element in all of this, in IoT as well as in the Industry 4.0. So where from all this data comes? So one of the examples that you see today is there is a huge amount of data being picked up by everybody from whatever you do on a day-to-day basis. For example, in your mobile phones, your positions, your preferences, your activities, your environment, everything is being captured. When you are moving around, for example, the departmental data, it comes from the weather, the payment of the bills, and schedules that you have. So much of data is being picked up by corporates, and this is being used to create certain experience for the users or the customers. And this is something is a big business, which is the one which I mentioned in the IoT and the Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 also means that we are becoming smarter in manufacturing. The fourth industrial revolution presents a lot of opportunities in manufacturing companies. If you go back on the industrial revolutions, there were the three revolutions. In 1700, the mechanical revolution, when the steam came, when the machines came, and the power was available for industries. And in 1800s, the electricity came, and the division of labor and mass production happened at that time. And in 1900, the industrial revolution happened, where there were IT-enabled programmable work and lesser and lesser reliance on manual labor happened. But today, in the industrial revolution, it is nothing but a connected cyber physical system powered by IoT and fueled by data, and create a fully interconnected society. And this is the change that is going to happen. And various segments which I mentioned earlier is also coming under this Industry 4.0. Now, looking at all these technologies, who are the people who are going to take up these technologies and adapt into the companies. This is going to decide which companies will survive, which companies are going to lose. So willingness of the companies today to accept these technologies and take it in is very much there. For example, we say the big data analytics, and many large amount of companies understand that today this is very important for their survival. So this chart is with regard to the preferences of those companies who to take up these technologies into their midst and then make it happen in the company, which includes the app and web enabled markets, IoT, machine learning and cloud computing, encryption, security, 3D printing, robots and humanoids, autonomous transport. Because of readability, I have put them here. So like this, many companies are feeling that they need to adopt this. This is based on a survey. So it implies that the industries realize that new technology adaptation are important for their survival. So that is something that we understand from this. The impact of Industry 4.0 is the job. That today we know that when all these are going to happen, much of the activities that people were paid to do will become irrelevant. I think they can also be fired. So that means that earlier I mentioned about 370. That now there are assessments 400 to 800 million jobs will be displaced by 2030. It can be different. It can be more still. So essentially, the type of job that is getting displaced are the physical labor, data collection, processing, manufacturing, retail, accommodation, food service, etc. They are all going to vanish. So, but while it vanishes, there will be new types of jobs which will be created for which were not existing earlier. And we will look at what are the type of jobs that are going to be new. So in the World Economic Forum report, they have very clearly brought out such studies on what are the future jobs that are going to be, which includes the jobs in the sectors like artificial intelligence, robotics, and blockchain. But there will also be equally profitable jobs in the area of like customer services, sales and marketing, training and skill development. They will continue to remain relevant even then. So this slide, though not well readable, is mentioning about the roles that are changing. It is the type of jobs that will become redundant, which includes, for example, data entry clerks, the postal services, assembly and factory workers, and you can also see drivers. I think that you can see that drivers is something that is very much evident today. The type of automobiles which will be coming out in the future will be driverless. That is slowly happening. So some of these jobs are going to become redundant. In fact, I am not going to speak about something that will really happen later, like the job of a doctor or a lawyer. All this can really become redundant. And maybe only engineers will remain. That is because something that I want to tell for our own comfort. But it will also be challenged one day. Look at energy and its use. This is something very, very important, because the energy consumption, when you go through the records, which sees that the energy consumption growth is increasing now. It is at an average of 1.7% per annum, but this is likely to taper down later. But when I go through this, I am really surprised to find that the dependence on coal and gasoline or even oil is not going to drop that drastically even till 2030. But there will be a lot of impact on, thrust on carbon pricing and its implementation, which means that there will be low carbon fuels like gaseous fuel, gas will be used in a much better way. And slowly, the investment into renewables will be higher. And the coal area will get divestment will be the point. So almost 1.2 trillion US dollar will be invested into renewables in the coming decade. And individual and community engagement energy generation, that means your home, you will be able to produce all your energy requirements. But in the industrial scale, the impact will be still in nuclear power, though nuclear power is only one small part of the overall power generation compared to the coal and the oil. The renewable sector will slowly reach even up to the nuclear power generation capability or level in the next decade. So this is the type of change that will happen in that sector. In the entertainment sector, there are various scenarios that can happen. I think you are now, many people have now stopped looking at TV. Though only old generation people are still attached to glued to the TV. Now TV is not going to be really a screen anymore. It will become a window into the virtual world. So video on demand, digital platforms, virtual reality, etc. are the topics that are going to be discussed in the coming years. And can we ever predict that the current videos providers like Netflix, Amazon, Apple, and Google are really going to dominate the market, or what else extra is going to emerge? And digitization, personalized advertising, and less regulation is going to be the key points in the coming years. And the TV and movie viewing will be elevated to a new level and what we have today. So what is that new level? For example, you may feel like a Superman one day when you watch the movie. That means you can plug into a character in the show, and in a brain net combination with virtual reality, you can actually feel the feelings of the character in the story. And this is another level that the entertainment has to grow. It will grow. But there are different scenarios that will evolve based on another study seeing that the digital platforms and the broadcasting, how this is going to change in the coming years, whether this many channels will be there, whether there will be a global digital platform companies who will replace all the national broadcasters, whether those national broadcasters will be able to pick up the level to the level of the current digital revolution and still remain relevant. If it is not relevant, nobody will be watching them. That is the main issue. Similarly, the global content production producers to dominate the market in the future, who will be supplying the programs which is worth watching for the new generation. So these are the type of questions which are coming in discussed in the entertainment segment. The technology is one side of the story, but the social impact on entertainment is another area that we need to understand and discuss. Coming to my area, which is space technology. Of course, space technology is something going to be relevant in the very naked, and some of the attributes of that I will discuss quickly. For example, the space technology is for services essentially, and the service includes data. Data can be in the form of digital data, whether it is various data like images, or it can be communication between two segments, one unidirectional or bidirectional. Whether you look at the streaming videos, you are looking at integrating the satellites and drones and terrestrial imagery into one. So it will be no longer you will be connecting to satellites alone. You really don't know through which route the whole data is reaching you. So one of the important capacity we need to have in the coming years in the space segment is to connect directly to the individual. And so he'll be able to deal with it without throwing any other route. Position service is going to be something going to be very, very important, and this is going to help in business. And societal applications and administration will get integrated into space technology applications. And space will continue to be a very important tool to remain the force to reckon with. I think those aspects will be addressed by all nations in the coming years as well. One of the interesting topic that has happened in the recent times is the private enterprises getting into space business and showing the mastery of handling rockets and demonstrating that they can become very relevant in building rocket systems and launching them in US. Of course, in US it happened, and they are going very well, strongly to demonstrate it. Those business tycoons who went into IT business and made enough money to get into space business, and that is a transition which I like very much. So you make your money in IT and come to space, so that we can grow the system. So this similar exercise is happening elsewhere. So look at Falcon 9, which is one of the biggest rocket that they built and went up to the moon, and two of the stages coming back and landing. It is something really wonderful for a person like me in this area to watch and then see such a great success. At least my younger days to now, I have been dreaming such a thing to make it happen, a rocket stage coming back and landing, but it really happened, and it is happening again and again successfully. And they have shown that through this process, it is possible to realize rocket at much lower cost. So it becomes affordable, and thus it gives pay way for a business model, which is a sustainable for larger utilization of space. I think that is the key of it, making it cheaper and become more economical, and thus new businesses will come out of it. So in the future, it is very clear that the conventional rocket will become non-viable, and only reusable systems will be viable. And here various elements are involved: what type of rockets are required, how to fly them, whether winged ones are needed, reusability is important. I think all these concepts are available. I'm not going to go into the detail because we have a different viewers here, but essentially to say that the reusability is going to be the driving force for all future space activity. Already Elon Musk gave his talk and said that he will move people to Mars and create colonies. But how far he is through, because it is like predictions making. You can predict something, you can hope something, but if it has to happen, many things have to converge to make it happen. But unfortunately, I am seeing that this is slowly slipping away. But still, I am not lost hope that one day he will be able to make his heavy rocket and then move people to Mars in a very cost-effective manner. Using the same rocket, he will be able to move people from US to Australia at the cost of a flight fare. So vertical takeoff, go through the space, land vertically, and then disembark. 100 people in one flight. So this is the type of model he worked out. So he said that commercial viability of such proposals are there. And this picture is something that shows that similar rockets going to Mars. He will first launch them to Earth orbit, refuel it by a second flight, then go to Mars and prepare the fuel in Mars using the carbon dioxide and water. He produced methane and oxygen, refill it, come back. So with that process, almost 2 lakhs of people can be relocated to Mars, and a colony will start operating in this model. So this is a model, and this is a commercial aspect of it that he has worked out. I'm hoping that some significant step in this direction will take place in 2030. But then looking at the space industry in the way for India, one of the important points that's already been announced by government, which includes the productionization of space systems through Indian industry and in exploration of the commercial opportunities for Indian space technology. So I'm very clear that many of the operational systems and rockets must be produced through Indian industry, and even satellites, the smaller ones has to be produced, but the bigger one can definitely be produced by industry with certain hand-holding from Indian Space Research Organization. And many of the technologies that we have has to be moved to industry. So basically, I find the very key area is application segment, and there only the industry has a bigger role. We have to develop industries to handle a lot of applications. So the applications in the communication, applications in remote sensing data and its value-added chain, which supports various types of industries and enterprises. Manufacturing area, of course, is very important. So the points here, very important points that need to be addressed while we make changes. And in large-scale industrialization in the coming years is the issue of startups and how the startups can be supported. I want to tell you that there are almost 50 startups in the space sector in India itself today, when compared to the almost 5,000 startups in various areas that has already started in India. But those startups are very interesting, but unless big industries come into this area, there will not be any real growth, because these type of things cannot be handled by small players. We need to have funding, and we need to have technological capability to handle failures, changes, and business disruptions, but still sustain it. For that, big industries are needed. The scale and profitability is currently low, and it has to increase. It will increase only then business comes. So this is another question that we need to address. Similarly, the globalization of manufacturing is something important, that if you have to get it something manufactured at a lower cost, we need to adopt from somewhere else. And additive manufacturing and other technologies that will come into space also has to come into space to make it more profitable and viable. One of the important area that is going to revolutionize is the drones. So the drones are really important in the communication remote sensing area, and space segment. The satellites are going to be the controlling element for drones in the future, because you cannot have thousands of drone pilots in the ground controlling the drones now, and they will be simply programmed to travel from one place to another, monitored by space segment, controlled and placed. For example, the activities like warfare, medical emergencies, deliveries, security activities, transportation, agriculture activity, etc. All this can be done very effectively by space technology, and various types of drones can be controlled. So only you need to launch them, and they will intelligently do all the work and come back to the service provider. So this is another big area which is going to evolve in the coming years. I don't want to take this too much to discuss today, because human spaceflight is another area which I thought very important. though it will not appear to you, all of us, that is very significant, but the role, the importance that is being given to other countries in the human space flight, again by US and other nations, it triggers me to say that the human space travel is a capability that we need to develop and create even under stress, because this, as a nation which is growing, this capability is something going to be essential for our future. For that, I have a justification which will come up a little later. For example, the colonization of Moon, Mars, and Venus is not just an idea. It is an essential capability that we need to have in the coming years. The Moon colony creation, the Mars colony, and the Venus colony, sufficient studies have been done. Work has been done by a lot of people. As human beings, having the ability to travel and move across the planets with the rocket technology, we cannot shun away from this capability when we are ready to do it, because we do not know what is there in future for us. It could be another virus, it could be an asteroid, or it could be something else. So we need to prepare and create this capability for our survival. And this is important. As a technological society, we must support and make it happen. I mentioned about various startups in India. I just don't want to go through each of them. The logos itself indicate the type of startups that have started working and in different sectors, in the launch vehicles, in satellites and applications. So they are now coming up and then demanding that we need support and hand holding with ISRO, and we should happily give that to enable this segment to develop in this country and become prosper, because it really adds up to the national asset of this country. So I want to once again speak about one famous person, Stephen Hawking. He just mentioned that the same points which I mentioned earlier, that it is important for the human race to spread out into the space for survival of the species. So it only says that it is not just exploration, it is about expanding the human habitat out of Earth into the solar system as we go forward in time. And next 10 years is a time that we have to invest for this also, even under stress or under a little bit of cost. Now, finally, I have two or three more slides to say that the India in 2030 is going to be one of the very important country in the world, the second largest economy by prediction, and it will be 75% GDP will be coming from the urban, and it will be a digital economy covering almost 23% of the population. Still, it is not 100%. You please note that. And Indian middle class will truly come into its own, and it will always drive the 75% of the consumer spending by this year. And upward mobility will drive growth across all consumption categories. Almost 140 million households will move to the middle class, and more income, and they will be spending into new areas, because the spendability and expenditure is something that keeps the financial segment of the country into a very high level. The aspirations are fast converging across urban and rural India, and better access will transform it into actual spend. The millennial and Generation Z preference will significantly shape the market. So business people are looking at the market, and they are looking at these two class of people to decide the market type. And digital market and digitally influenced consumption is the norm. And the hope is that our eternal search for value will enhance the e-commerce segment. I think this is a commercial statement, but how it is going to evolve. It's already in the urban side, the e-commerce is really prevalent, but in the rural side, it may not be. The technology-enabled new business models will leverage inherent comfort with usership and desire for increased convenience and well-being. Business, policy, and civil society leaders will collectively drive an economy which is really very good. So what we say is in India 2030 will be a playground for growth and innovation for consumer business, and both Indian and global, established and emerging. So this is a type of assessment that is available on India in 2030 in terms of economy per se. So technology can grow only in a very flourishing economy because there is enough money need to be invested for technological growth. So to achieve the goal in 2030, we need to have a sufficient control of population. I think that may happen with the proper intervention by the government. The access to food, water, healthcare, education, employment in a rural area, population has to be, especially the below poverty line, has to improve from 15% to 5%. And influx into the city is a big menace as far as the maintenance of urban facilities are concerned, and how this can be made sure. Because once Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam mentioned about this topic in his book, and the book is there with me. I was going through that. The India 2020, he spoke about all that in that book, but still that dream is still far away. The agriculture production, sustenance, independence of climate change impacts, depletion and land and water, and access to modern technologies to industries and also to the youth. I think these are the things that we need to do to get into those states that we mentioned. And in very specific topics, I am not going to stress much. We have a very well-educated urban youth. Skilling has to be improved, which is a one big question everywhere being talked. They are educated, but less skilled. And many of them are reluctant to dirty the feet, and they liken us for the blue-collar jobs. But still, they have the flair for learning tools in IoT and proven. They have a proven global acceptance. But 60% of the people are still rural, and this sizable share cannot be forgotten while we making policies. So, in essence, we say the skilling in hardware and application tools has to be done. Digital technologies we need to embrace, and the digital economy also we need to embrace. And institutions to impart fast learning certification has to come up. We need to restructure our education. Our education policy is still very old one. Many things are, reports are submitted, but nothing happens there. Small enterprises to be supported, funded, places to help prototyping and to market, the ways are to be opened. This is a big problem, which I am understanding from small business people. They will have an idea, but there is no way to make it and show that it works. So there must be a room for them to prepare this and then go to market. This is a very key area where government interventions are needed. Technologies for value addition in agriculture products, village industry, small business, that is to be promoted. And we need to focus on environmental friendly industries because our country resources are limited and people are growing in big in numbers. So India 2030 is going to be in the midst of a technology driven world. And we have to absorb that whatever is going to happen in various segments to remain relevant. And I'm sure we can definitely do this. For this, we need to have a multi-pronged approach to incubate new enterprises, technology-driven companies, customer service orientation, skill-based learning and education, and self-reliance, of course. So this is the essence of what I want to speak about the 2030. And I'm sure the 2030 is going to be an exciting year for all of us. And let us watch and see how it is going to really evolve. So all the COVID period will vanish, and this also will go away. So as was said earlier, and we look forward only to the bright blue sky, even while the dark clouds are around us today. So thank you once again for the opportunity given to me.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful presentation. And it was so thought-provoking, and it's very enrichment, having a lot of enrichment. So can I take some questions from the participants so that maybe 3, 4, if you have time, sir?
Yes, I have time, no issue. I am free.
Okay. Okay, so
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take the first question from Human Finance. I think I pronounced the name correctly. The NASA and the USA has been funding the US private sector by awarding study design development contracts. Does ISRO plan to do the same to increase the revenue for the Indian startups to lead towards the growth?
No, we already have similar contracts. I think it is nothing new for us. We also enter into different contracts of this nature. But they are not exactly like NASA, because the type of people around here, I think we need to understand. We cannot equate the India situation with what is there in US. In space sector, even before NASA came, there were people who are able to design and develop rockets. There were missile systems, and the NASA came into later, and they collected that and converted into rockets and then built the space program themselves, while the defense industries grew in similar lines. So they had technological capability industries even before NASA were there. It is not the case in India. The ability of ISRO in creating the capability in Indian industry is something that we are working at. The whole knowledge and capability were developed within the space agency, and that is being given to the industries, not the other way. So this creates a different model that is needed for our country, which could be at variance from what we are doing it in US and other places. So this is essence in terms of the difference. But I want to tell you that now with the changed scenario, with the better educational systems and research facilities available, we are definitely entering into development models, contracts, where industries can develop from fundamental and come out to the final product, which we will be able to adopt into the system. It is happening in payloads, it's happening into onboard systems, etc.
Thank you, sir. The second question is from Chiranjeevi. Does Somnath sir feel that the learning skills of the human beings come down as the AI may assist our thinking and our learning processes in all the possible ways?
Definitely not, because AI is an augmentation of our capability. The human beings are evolving to be better and better with the passage of time. I think anybody thinks that your abilities are going down, that if it goes down, our race will become extinct. See, the ability of a species to survive in this world is its ability to adapt and learn to the requirement of the current times. So I have no doubt about it that the ability of our species is only increasing, and we are only finding ways by which it can be still augmented. So AI is yet another tool to augment that capability.
Thank you, sir. And the next question is from Francis Joseph. What are the economic and demographic challenges expected in 2030 and how we are going to address that?
No, essentially, that is a question that I try to answer in my presentation. Essentially the economic challenges, the demographic challenges is something I don't want to answer, because that is it is not in my domain. Maybe I know the view, but it's not something that I need to discuss here.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Prantik Chakrabarti. Can we hope the companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, which exist in the US, will develop in India, which can seriously handle the demands of the country's space sector?
I understand your question in slide. Now, let me understand that they come to India and then start the business in India. Is it that you have idea?
Yeah, which exist in US. They come to India, develop it in India, so that they can handle a lot of demands on the country's space sector.
Okay, for this, we need to give a lot of preparatory material for you to understand the dynamics of the whole thing. For them to come to India, there must be a business for them to come to India. So it is not easy. For example, if you look at Lockheed Martin, in US itself, they are facing challenges. They don't have a market. Okay. So you know that many rockets in US itself vanished. For example, Titan is no longer operating. The Delta is not having enough launches unless the US government gives a defense launch. The ULA is the one. Atlas is something that is operating for scientific missions using a cooperative model of various industries in US. So the rocket business is not a profitable business. Rocket business is a subsidized business. It is a national asset which government spends money to make sure that you have this capability over and above other countries, because it is not available for purchase when you want something to be done. But of course, commercial people like Arianespace gives you a launch under different conditions, and they don't take everything for you. For example, Arianespace will never launch a moon mission for you. So when somebody want to come to India and then create a capability in India, it follows that there is a business model that is worth pursuing. I do not know whether there is a business model exists for Lockheed Martin or anybody else to come to India and then establish and manufacture, unless they find that they are able to make it much cheaper, much better, and which in large numbers, and there is a Asian consumers waiting for them to be utilized. If they find the analysis is worth working out, they may let them come. I think it is not going to be bad for us. It will only enable us to become better. So I'll wait for them to come.
Thank you, sir. And the next question is from Minnie Thomas. What is the role of technical institutes to realize the dream of India 2030 leading the world?
Once again, repeat please the question.
What is the role of technical institutes to realize the dream of India 2030 leading the world?
I addressed this in some way. It is in the area of knowledge and education. I mentioned it. The technical side is only what I am. It's not what I have not stressed. But you know that technical means it involves institutions of higher learning, like the research labs like IITs, the NITs, the engineering colleges, the ITIs, the skilling areas. All of them come into the technical domain. the point, very important point here is, of course, all these area, it's not engineering alone. It gets into medical, it gets into biomedical, it gets into agriculture, it gets into fisheries. All of them are technical domains. So the key, what is missing today, because we are covering all the syllabus and teaching all them in a normal way. This is going to change. But what is the most important point is, people coming out of there are not employable today. This is a comment that is being made by many industries. So they are expecting people to come out and start work next day, but they have to spend 6 months, 1 year to train you to enable to take up a job. This is costing companies today. The time adaptable for companies to train you is simply not there, because company itself is changing their business in few months of time. So in this type of scenarios, the government type of approaches is not going to work. That means you need people with sufficiently skilled to come out of the institutions to handle the changed industrial system. This is a challenge. And who can learn faster, come out with larger amount of skills, and don't have to be trained, are the one in need of it. That is the change that is needed.
Thank you, sir. And the next question is from Abhinav Ajit. The implication of privatizing the space sector in India.
There is no question of privatization of space sector. I think this is a wrong terminology that we are using. The private players are essential part of this country. See, let us understand that the business is not all in the government sector. The economy of this country is done by both public sector as well as private sector, and they are contributors of the national economy. And the employment in the private sector is far greater than that is employed in the public sector. So there is nothing wrong in having private sector. The question is that whether we have the strategic areas identified where we need to protect. That is the only question that is to be addressed. So in coming to the space sector, if you really look at the public players coming into space sector, is nothing new. In the very beginning of our program itself, space was working with private sector only. In fact, all the rockets, almost 80% of the rocket is made only by private enterprises today in this country. And ISRO is only an integrator. They are designers, they are integrators, and they add the very critical value to it at the last phase and make the launch. And they do the essential knowledge part of it. So the industries are the one who actually produce them. And the people working in industries are far greater than the people working in ISRO to produce rockets and satellites. So that is already there. There is no question of privatizing anything. The participation of the private industry will become higher in the coming years. They may get into more and more integrator job where the production item can be handled, and ISRO can handle the research and future growth area. So with the available people, we can do much more important jobs than mundane routine activity. This is the whole principle of the private participation in space. But I want to add one more thing in there. I am still looking at some industries in India to become a Lockheed Martin, to become a Boeing. So I'll be most happy to see them coming up with their own rocket, their own design, and challenge ISRO. I think this is something that I am waiting to happen.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's a very good thing. Like from the next question is from Anurag. What kind of innovations the startup can contribute to the space industry? Is there any examples to that?
Yeah, there are many examples. The slide thought that the time was not there, so I didn't spend the time on it. The startups today, there are 3 companies, startups are there, which are proposing to build the rockets. And there are many other companies in satellites and other areas. So I will concentrate only on rocket startup companies. Those companies are incubated in IITs and similar places with the professors supporting them. They are designing the rocket. In fact, I had meetings and discussions with them to understand their ideas, and I have supported personally to tell them that you must work on it. And in fact, they were graceful to share their technical knowledge with me, because I did not share my knowledge with them because that is not allowed. So I wanted to understand what they are really doing. So when I saw that, I am really happy to see that they are capable and they need to be supported. And for this, the policies have to come up in this country. And I'm sure that even that comes up, these people will be able to do that. Only thing, they need to be supported by money and the industries should come forward to support these startups so that they can really design and make something that will really fly. I hope that will happen, and wish all the best to them.
Thank you, sir. And just adding to that, Somnath sir is actually the chairman of the startup committee along with the CET, which is here in Trivandrum, right, sir? And you can actually give a little more insight to that, so that because a lot of questions are relating to the startup, how they can actually help in getting associated with the ISRO and what are the activities. So if you can actually just give a brief about them, that will be of a great help to many of the people.
Yeah, I am a chairman of the board of the Trust Research Park. That is an incubation center for all tech companies, not space alone, any area. And this is linked to Trivandrum, the College of Engineering Trivandrum, and it is in front of the college itself that there is a building that we have hired and started working there. So essentially, we are enablers and bringing people together. Basically, the College of Engineering Trivandrum, there are professors and teachers, the research students there, the retired hands that are available in this city from various segments, industries and entrepreneurs who are able to support us in various projects, government funding that is available through various channels and channelize them to bring it there, and thus create a place for such startups to come on specific topics which will be reviewed and funded, that there will be a place to incubate this activity and slowly look at for the market. So this is the type of model which is available. So this is an invitation to all the people who have a flair for entrepreneurship and new developments. There is a place which I mentioned in my presentation also. What is lacking is a place for your idea to take shape, and with the support of experts and reviewers that you can really work on it. And your imagination is the limit, and we will also help you to finding out how to finance, fund, etc., wherever to whatever limited extent, and use the technological capability available in this city to support you. So this is an invitation to all of you to join.
So the next is a very interesting question to an engineer. When education is getting to becoming self-learned and through e-education, the arts schools and other similar courses have got a lot of challenges. How do you see through it?
It will have its own challenges, but then definitely there will be people with varied interest. So technology is one side of the story, but human feeling and experience are not limited to technology alone. Art, culture, music, history, various topics, the people become interested, and there is going to be a large segment of the people who will still be interested. The question here is, you need to go into those domains only when your heart tells you that you go. And it should not be for getting a degree that you go and study history, for getting a degree that you go and study Malayalam literature and English literature. This concept of formal education has to change. And when it changes, and when people study or learn something for their passion and looking at opportunities, definitely it is going to be excellent. And I want to tell you that current generation are really seeking their passion. We have seen a lot of young people not choosing engineering, not choosing medicine. They are going to various domains of their own interest and seeking learning possibilities in these segments, in various fine arts and other domains, which they think is going to be beneficial. And it is. There is money and there is business and there is life in areas other than technology. So let us not limit. When you discuss technology, don't think that everything else is only engineering and technology. There is life beyond this. And those who are having passion there will find it and explore it.
Thank you, sir. And the next question is from Govidas Pai. I have got to know that ISRO have planned about building India's own space station. How ISRO is gearing up for that mission?
No, we have not declared that we have a project for a space station. Probably he is talking about a vision that one day when you have the human space flight happening, and we have a routine human missions to space station is an essential element of that. Such an idea has to be there when you talk about a human space flight today. So in our overall plan, which is a very long plan, maybe many tens of years from now, the space station is an element there. So with that element only, there is a merit in discussing human spaceflight today. So it is an element of the total overall plan, how this segment of activity of human spaceflight should get evolved. Under that context, there is space station. But if you ask me today, there is a design, there is a plan to build it tomorrow. Are you working on it? The answer is no.
Next question from Dr. Ranjit Nair. In the area of knowledge and education, what do you mean by super intelligent mass individualization of learning?
I mentioned about it also there when I explained that the whole process of education will get changed. For example, think about a class in which there are different levels of people. One fellow who is able to understand it much deeper, another person who understands it only peripherally. So the level of ability of the person to understand will vary. So the whole learning process will adapt to this change. So it understands on an online process, when the response of the person changes, it will adapt itself to put more and more complex problems, complex ideas, and better way of putting it to a person of higher ability adaptably. And this is what I understand from that statement.
Sir, another question is that as an aerospace engineer, is from Gokul Ravi. As an aerospace engineer and an aspiring entrepreneur, I want to know whether small satellite launch vehicle market is going to be overcrowded.
Going to be overcrowded?
Yes.
Yeah, it is just about to start. So let us start, and then we will assess little later whether it is getting crowded or not crowded. Small satellite launch vehicle market has not yet started. There is only a projection today, and not even a small satellite launch vehicle other than Electron or some other in China till now launched. And we are also getting ready for our own launch vehicle. So when this come into business and large number of satellites get launched, then crowding will start. As on today, I will only say there are many projections. There will be 4,000 satellites, 5,000 satellites, like that. But all these are projections today. It is not economically right now get into a model, or manufacturing has not started. In fact, some of those companies who talked about this have now submitted their bankruptcy notice also. So we won't make any predictions at this moment that crowding is a big problem. Let it start, then we will see.
Okay, the question from GGN. Samsung declared that the launch of quantum phones. So what can be the impact of upcoming quantum era in the space technology?
Upcoming quantum?
Quantum era.
I do not have full knowledge to answer that question.
Okay, thank you, sir. And from the space technology overshoots for very important sectors in the area of social service. I am not sure about the question, sir. Thank you. Sorry for that. What are the chances of Indian women space travel missions in 2030?
Very good chance.
And anybody?
I should deny a chance to a lady. I am not going to deny. But then it will be decided appropriately, not by me, or there is no comment I need to make about it.
And I will take this as a last question, and we will close it. What ISRO doing for protecting the India borders from the space? Can we dream of a day when we do not have any soldiers manually protecting our borders?
I believe that is a very good dream, and I'll also support you to have such a dream, because having a force waiting around the borders to protect us is a redundant measure when the border can be protected other means. Of course, borders itself are a concept in our mind. And in fact, we should not have a border and to fight for. I think this is I said about the global nation concept. But now coming to the brass tacks, the ground reality is that we need to have a large surveillance across the borders to keep it safe. So there are various tools used. Currently, space technology has a very big role even today to do that work, which is more into areas of surveillance and giving information for the ground people to handle it. So what really help coming from space is today only in terms of data, and the data has to be understood and used by the people appropriately. So this is the current support, but this support can grow into various segments. But space alone cannot do this work, because the local activities cannot be managed by space. it can be managed by multi-layers of system, which includes drones and unmanned systems, robotic operators, local surveillance systems, ground sensors. So it is an integrated, electro sensor system across the borders can really replace forces. For example, if you have to retaliate, how do you retaliate using already installed facilities automatically? All this can be thought about. So there are methods, but it requires huge investment and also technology development. I am hopeful in the coming years some of these are really going to happen, and casualties and other risks associated with the human being around this very difficult different terrains has to be minimized, and it is one of our responsibility to evolve proper technologies for it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the wonderful session. And let's close our session with this. And I will invite Mr. Shabrinath G. Pillai, Internet Society, for the vote of thanks and giving over to you, Shabrinath G. Pillai.
Thank you, Krishna Kumar, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pride that I stand before you to propose the vote of thanks to Dr. Somanath. Taking us through this beautiful discussion right from Arthur Clarke, who was, kind of a science fiction writer who proposed many theories and even the geostationary orbit that, kind of supports such forms of communication systems that we are using right now as well. Going through different phases of technology, through artificial intelligence, through industry 4.0, genomics in medicine. What particularly struck me was that despite so much of advancements in many walks of life, the development on the agricultural space is very limited, and there is much scope for improvement in that space, and that I think that is probably one area where the inter-society, where there are people from multifaceted walks of life, can come together and contribute more. And then the paradigm shift in education, taking us through cyber-physical systems. And another thing that was kind of very comforting was despite other professions having serious downfall, engineers will prevail. The hope that engineers will sustain and continue to have more of responsible activities to be done. And at the end, taking us to Stephen Hawking, none other than Stephen Hawking, who's right from a science fiction writer all the way down to the serious scientist out there who prescribes and dedicated his life towards the theory of everything coming together. Well, thank you so much, Somnath sir. That talk was very, very inspiring and taking us through a lot of information. At one point, we had close to 270 participants in this webinar, and right towards the end of the seminar, listening to your answers, we had close to 222 participants. So that kind of shows how valuable your speech was and how interested, how glued the audience were to your speech. Thank you so much, Somnath sir, for spending your valuable time with us and giving us so much of insight about how India would be in 2030 and how we should prepare ourselves for 2030. And likewise, I would also wish to extend my heartfelt thanks to the organizers of this event, especially Harindra Lal sir, the pioneer of the Inter-Society webinar series, and of course, the co-hosts of this webinar, the IEEE Kerala section, the Institution of Engineers, the Institute of Engineers India chapter, the Project Management Institute of India, the Computer Society of India, and the Engineering in Medicine and Biology Society of IEEE Kerala section. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all societies, and thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shabrinath G. Pillai, for a wonderful vote of thanks, and thank you, Somnath sir, for the great session. So the next session of the Inter-Society Weekly Webinar Series will be on the next Wednesday, and it will be having The topic will be 5 Phases of Inequality of COVID-19 by Dr. Sajida Bashir. She is the Vice Chairperson of Vaikam Maulavi Foundation Trust, advisor of Office of the Global Director of Education, World Bank, Washington, D.C. It will be on Wednesday, 27th of May, 6 to 7. And hope to see you all soon there. Thank
So
you.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful session.